Hello my friends, I'm Larsen and I'm the IRC Tire Guy. Today we are continuing with your viewer submissions. We're on to episode 3. The first 2 episodes have been great. I love seeing the hard work. I love seeing the practice. Keep the videos coming. This is a lot of fun and I'm going to keep doing them until I'm fully healed up. Let's jump right into it with an entry from Lee Avery. This is a hill climb. Here we go. Let's watch it. Okay, pretty loose. Yeah, log in the middle. The toss at the top. I like it. Okay, so a couple things right off the bat. This is a somewhat loose hill climb. We see this all the time, right? A down log in the middle of the hill. And there is a key piece to your approach. And Lee made the mistake here that I want to talk about. This is going to save a lot of you guys when you run into this situation. Now, if you listen on entry, I can't quite see because, you know, he's kind of in the woods there. It looks like it's a pretty loamy dirt, pretty loose. Right off the bat, I'm going to say get the power up just a little bit more. So listen to his entry. Okay, so I paused it at about 5 foot before the log. At this point, I would be focused on loading the engine. As soon as I see there's a log in the middle of the climb or an obstacle in the middle of the climb, my focus is going to be putting the maximum amount of power down before the obstacle so I don't put power down on the obstacle. You can hear Lee's kind of like lugging the whole way up, where honestly, any of these hill climbs, I'm gonna do more than I need. I'm gonna over rev. You're always looking for a tractable spin. I say that all the time on hill climbs. You're focusing on a pretty heavy power with the throttle and actuating that control of the spin, keeping the bike in the pipe, keeping that wheel spin moving to maintain that movement forward with the clutch. So you're focusing heavily on that during these climbs, and he's kind of down in the bottom of the power. Now, I want you to listen to exactly what it sounds like when his rear tire hits the log. Here we go. That RPM pops up to honestly where it should be before the obstacle. This is one of the most common mistakes that I see riders make. They come into the obstacle and they try to gain momentum in the obstacle rather than before it. So I would have put heavier power down before the obstacle and then try to be as minimal as possible. No matter what, if you are on a log and you gas it, your tire will spin. Now, if you notice here, he gassed it, his RPM went up, and then as soon as the rear tire hits the dirt, it hooks and he chops. He chops the throttle. That hook gave him a little bit of a wheelie and now he's kind of fighting. So this is what I'm talking about. Using that constant delivery of power, almost wide open, and actuating the spin of the rear tire with the clutch. I mean, this is something that Colton Haker taught me years ago. He's like, dude, just hold it wide open and fly the clutch the whole way up the hill. That's how you find the maximum amount of spin, keeping the bike in the pipe, and that maximum momentum forward. So as soon as he chops, you can see the wheel comes up. Now he's kind of like fighting how much power to give it because he keeps hooking up and almost wheeling over. There's another piece of body position that I want to talk about here too. So once again, goes over the log, gets a little bit of a wheelie, and you can hear his RPM's up and down the whole way. The rest of the way up that hill, his RPM should have just been up in the pipe, up the rest of the way up the hill. So obviously focusing on that heavy throttle, actuating the control of the RPM within your clutch is the key piece for the remainder of that hill. The other piece is his body position. So notice, as soon as he gets over the log, he gasses, the bike starts to wheelie, it puts him in the seat. Now he's in the seat and he's essentially seated the rest of the way up the hill. When you're on a hill climb, body position is a key piece, and my focus is to stay in that knees forward bent position, depending on the steepness of the hill, but this is a pretty dang steep hill, so knees forward, bent position, but you're not seated. You're floating this high above the seat. Focusing on putting the pressure down through the pegs is going to increase your ability to move back and forth to counteract those outside forces, whether it's an obstacle on the hill or the power of the bike. You're pressing through the pegs and floating above that seat the whole way, rather than sitting and basically putting all your weight on the rear tire, making that tire want to overhook and flip you over. So floating above that seat about 2 inches, putting the pressure down through the pegs, that gives you a better ability to move from left to right. It also allows you to counter outside forces. If you do happen to get a hook or the front tire does start to come up, you can move that weight forward, countering that force. So notice he's seated all over the place, kind of on the power, and you got to do the toss. Good bail there on the toss, pretty solid. Big pieces that I would focus on, Lee. Again, heavy power before the obstacle, learning how to get comfortable holding that power on, flying the clutch, using that clutch to keep the bike up in the pipe and keep the constant spin of the rear tire on those loose hill climbs. That's a key piece. And then body position. Pressing through the pegs, floating, 2 inches above your seat, keeping the knees forward and keeping yourself moving from left to right to counter balance, outside forces, back and forth forces, etc. Good run, Lee. I love it. Those little changes will make a huge difference in your hill climb approach. Let's move forward. We've got a big log from Jimmy Hoffa. Coming in hot here. Dude, such a good bail though, right? Like, slow-mo here. James comes in hot. That's a big obstacle, brother. And if it looks gnarly on video, we know it's gnarly in real life. So let's talk about that. A couple things here. Let's listen to his bike. Let's talk about how we would deliver the power here. So as soon as he's kind of just smooth on the power. Once again, this kind of goes back to what we were just talking about with that downed log in the middle of the hill in Lee's previous video. You're kind of throttling into it. It's like, whoa, 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 and you're just almost trying to hit it like a jump. I would say getting the RPM up significantly more, loading that flywheel significantly more before the obstacle is going to be the key piece. You want to put the power down in the dirt before you actually get into this like root log down giant tree that you're hitting. The power should be down before it. And if you listen, the sound of the bike, like as you bail, the rev of the bike is actually how much power you should have put down before the obstacle. Right there, that's how much power I would have put down. Big load of power before the obstacle to get that initial momentum to make it up. Now, the other thing is the placement of the front tire. And this is a challenging one to look at, but if we watch the slow-mo here, you kind of just rode up it, and it looks like it's undercut, I mean, pretty gnarly. And you can see, I mean, it uses all the suspension there. Your weight goes all the way forward, and it almost deflects you away from the obstacle. I would say there's a couple ways you could approach it. You could totally do it that way, keeping the tires in contact the whole time. That's going to be, heavily dictated by your ability to put a heavy load of power down before it. This almost reminds me of a big block that I did a while back. That was, it actually tipped back just a little bit. I want you to notice where I place my front tire on this big block. As I'm doing a double blip, but it's a heavy load of power. I'm really loading that engine to get the propulsion up and over. I'm also placing my front tire right on the top of the obstacle. So I would have maybe floated my front tire all the way to that last log. It looks like it's almost 2 logs. I can't quite tell, it might be just one big root or something, but I would float my front tire all the way to the top. That would allow me more time to get my weight completely forward and above the machine to then let the bike come out from under me as I go up this obstacle. That's a big one, man. And honestly, James, like, good bail, like really solid bail. And like I said, if it looks big on video, which it does, I mean, as you're falling here, we're talking about, I don't know how tall you are, but it's at least 6 foot tall. That's a big obstacle, heavier load of power before it. I would lift my front tire into the face of that obstacle and then really think about driving my rear tire through it, not really doing like a jab zap where I'm trying to float to the top. I want my rear tire to drive all the way through it. The front tire placement is going to allow you to get forward on that. So bigger load of power before it, placing that front tire, essentially right at the top of the obstacle, getting the weight all the way forward, and then really focusing on that second burst of power to propel you up and over. Like I said, kind of similar to that block I was talking about. I'll have to find a big obstacle like that, and or maybe I'll just go here. This looks like maybe Washington. Whenever I see ferns in the video, so I'm guessing Washington. I don't know where it is, but yeah, man, good. That's a gnarly one. Super, super sick. Nice job, James. Let's move on. Okay, this next one is from Kale Hardwood. Kale comments all the time. Thanks for watching the videos, brother. Kale's the man. He's doing a log pivot on an electric bike. Let's watch it. Two versions here.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So, a couple things about pivoting over a logging, and these are truly some underrated understandings that will completely change your approach here. Now, no matter what bike you're on, whether it's electric, two-stroke, four-stroke, focusing on where we deliver the power, just like what we were talking about in the previous two submissions, focusing on where you put the power is going to be a key piece. Now, on a pivot turn over a log, a lot of riders will try to throttle into that log, and that's basically exactly what you did here. You can hear you're inputting power on top of the log. So one more time. Spin. Same thing. Same thing. Both times you're inputting power on the log. No matter what, the tire is going to spin, especially on a log with no bark on it, right? There's not a lot of traction on those. The other piece of this is the angle that you're hitting it at. And this is the key understanding that will change your approach when you're pivoting over a log. The more distance you create between your tires and the log, the further away you set up from the log, the more time you have to square up and hit the log as straight as possible with your rear tire. So each one of these, you're kind of hitting the log crooked. And this is a common misconception that I see riders make when they're trying to pivot turn over a log. They think they have to hit it crooked to pivot turn over. If you can initiate your pivot earlier and get the rear tire to hit it as square as possible, you're going to increase the likelihood of tractable control as you go over the top. So notice here, I'm creating my pivot as early as possible. And then you can hear I'm putting the power down before the rear tire contacts the log. And then I'm as minimal as possible as I go over the top of the log. So the key piece here is first hitting it as square as possible, and then second, putting the power down before the rear tire contacts the log. Any log that I encounter on the trail, whether I'm pivoting over it or it's a sideways downed log on the trail, my focus is to hit it as square as possible always. So it's not always square, but the more square you can get that rear tire contact on the log, the higher likelihood of success you're going to have. Really nice move, Kale. Good practice. Input that power. You know, that means you have to get the front tire up quicker. Putting the power down as early as possible. You have to initiate that front tire lift as quickly as possible, that pivot as quickly as possible before the rear tire contacts the log. That way you don't spin as you go over the top of it. Good run, man. That was pretty dang solid. Now we've got an entry from Dennis Vasanen. This is a KTM, little unstuck technique. We talked a bunch about the unstuck technique in the last episode. Oh yeah, this is a perfect tire to practice on. He's down in a hole here. That's a bigger disadvantage. Yeah, okay, so let's just pause on this one. Let's restart that one and watch it again. The key piece here is your movement. Dennis, the biggest part of this is understanding that you have to get your weight all the way forward. It's the same thing we spoke about in the previous episode. Getting your weight all the way forward allows you to drive your weight back. Now, think of it like this. As you stand up on the bike, you're initiating throttle and clutch simultaneous with your movement forward. And when you do that, the power of the bike puts you back down into your seat. So no matter where you are, even if you're on flat ground, when you turn the throttle, the force pushes you back. If you turn the throttle at the same time you are trying to move forward, you have to be able to overcome that power that's putting you back down in the seat with muscle. So you're going to use more energy, and more likely than not, you're not going to be able to overcome the 30 to 50 horsepower your bike can put down to the ground, right? So the focus here is for you to drive your weight all the way forward, then release the clutch and allow the bike to come out from under you up the obstacle. Watch this one more time. You are initiating the release of throttle and clutch almost simultaneous with your movement forward. You've got to initiate the movement forward, jump off the ground, be aggressive with that movement, get the weight all the way forward, then release the clutch. Let's watch the rest of these here. So we're set up, hips back. That was better. It was still pretty simultaneous though. That was still pretty simultaneous. Yeah, it's better. Still pretty simultaneous. That movement is happening at the same time as your throttle and clutch, and you're looking to get the movement first, then release the throttle and clutch. Something I even say in classes is like, I'll stand on the obstacle and stick my hand out in front of your bike and say, hit your head on my hand before you release the clutch. And that's like a good thing to think about. Just get that head all the way forward so you can see your front tire, then release the clutch. That means aggression with your movement is going to be key, because the slower you go in that movement, the more you have to balance. The more aggression you can get forward, the quicker it happens and the easier it's going to be for you. But yeah, later on that clutch release, that's one of the most common things that I see. Good practice though, man. Now we're going to move on to Mika Perlman. This is a double blip over a big log. We talked about double blips last time as well. All right, that was pretty decent. That's a big log. Pretty light touch. There's one more. Yeah. Okay, so we spoke about double blips on the last episode, but it's kind of the same thing that we're talking about here. One of the key pieces is the placement of your front tire. Making sure that you're hitting the front tire hard enough on the obstacle to get that hindrance in motion to allow your weight to move forward is key. Now, the first one, you got some pretty decent suspension compression, some good placement, and it did allow you to get that weight forward. You can initiate that a little bit with your body. Watching the second one, we missed the front tire completely there. So to me, that means that, I'm not sure if maybe this one you were going for a double blip and the next one you were going for a splatter, but I'm going to assume they were both double blips. And I'm going to assume that you don't quite have the ability to place your front tire in the same spot every single time on the obstacle. So that to me means you should practice your first blip over and over. I always say this, you should be able to do 10 clutch ups in a row that sound and look identical every single time. So that's the key piece. They sound the same. It's not like this one was over revved, this one was under revved, this one bogged. They should sound exactly the same every single time. They should look identical. If you can get your clutch ups to look identical every time, you're gonna have such an easier time placing your front tire in the right spot for the double blips. I always say you could spray paint or put a sticker on a log, and I'll put my front tire there 10 times out of 10 because I've done so many and I've practiced that so much. So the first piece is just being comfortable with your clutch up, making sure that you're getting a consistent lift every single time. That's going to allow for consistency in front tire placement, consistency in movement forward, and consistency within your entire double blip approach. Most riders jump into a log as quickly as possible rather than practicing the fundamentals of just the clutch up, the right timing within throttle and clutch movement, body position. Something you can also do to get a little bit more suspension compression on the obstacle is drag a little bit of front brake. So sometimes you can actually see my front tire almost locks up before it hits the obstacle. That increases my suspension compression. Even on the one where you got good suspension compression, boom, we're gonna pause it right there. If you compare it to my suspension compression on any other double blip, you will see that I'm maybe 2 or 3 inches more compressed with that front suspension than you are. That creates more suspension compression and rebound. It also creates a higher ability for me to move forward in front of the force to then be able to counteract back to hold traction over the top. That's a really good run. Practice your clutch up. Make sure you're consistent so you can place that front tire in the same spot every single time. Great entry, Mika. I love it. This next one is from Andreas Harlow. This is a Stark Varg double blip. Here we go. Yeah. Cool thing about the Stark is you can hear the rear tire, and that was in the previous episodes we did on the Stark. I was like focusing on making sure my tire wasn't spinning on top of it. So that kind of helps you with your throttle control. Obviously there's no clutch on a Stark, it's all direct throttle. This is a good approach. I would say first, focus heavily on your initiation of the lift. You're getting a little bit of suspension compression. I like to separate everything. Knees forward, front and rear brake in simultaneously. That gets that suspension compression. Snap the knees back, initiate the throttle to get the front tire into the air. Separating the two things, the suspension compression, the suspension rebound, and really focusing on adding throttle to the rebound will give you a nice consistent lift. I'll also say I would lift a little bit earlier. You're lifting like a foot before the log, lift 2 feet. That's gonna allow you to separate the two blips where you're kind of like just throttling through it. That's gonna allow you to separate the two blips. It's also gonna allow you a little practice for the placement of the front tire, what we just spoke about. Again, you can see you kind of graze the obstacle, which is fine in a lot of ways. Like, I can't quite tell how big this log is. It looks like it's pretty big. It looks like it's a good one to practice the double blip on. There's a time and a place where I just drive the front tire into the obstacle. There's a time and a place where I double blip it. It all comes down to the variable of size. That being said, I think in this situation, getting the front tire up early, practicing 2 distinct blips of that throttle to get the bike up and over the obstacle is gonna be key for your approach. Good stuff though, man. The Stark's a fun one to practice on. It almost takes a layer of that clutch out and allows you to really focus on consistent movement with your body to get suspension compression, mixing in brakes to assist with suspension compression and rebound. And I think it also kind of hones in your throttle control. So practice those things, focus on. Last one, guys, last one. This is Saber EXC from Instagram. This is a splatter. We talked about splatters a little bit last time. Coming in hot. Yeah, that's a good splatter, man. Really solid. Let's watch that one more time. Listen to the bike. Pretty good load of power. I would say, really, really good. Good job, man. There's a couple changes you could make that will give you more consistency with tractable control and kind of more confidence within your splatter. So, and honestly, like I said, that's really good. I'm nitpicking here, but you sent the video in. You want me to nitpick, right? So let's pause it right when you straighten out for the kicker. What I would say, and if you compare it to myself here, I would say really focus on getting the knees completely straight and the head forward off of the kicker. This allows for more suspension compression or rebound because you're straightening your knees. You're going to get more pop off of the obstacle. Having that habit of straightening the knees off the kickers during the splatter is a key piece for your approach. The other piece is off this kicker, I would say load that engine a little bit more, like really focus on getting the power up, the clutch in, reduce and release. If you notice here, my position off of the kicker and my position as soon as the rear tire makes contact with the obstacle is the same. So if you notice here, as soon as your rear tire contacts the obstacle, the knees start to come forward. And then you leave your knees in the same place and you drop down with the hips, which is right, but I want you to notice the difference. Your hips drop kind of straight down, whereas my hips come all the way back to that rear fender. My hips dropping back to the rear fender allow for a slower drop of the front tire on landing. It also allows for a higher ability to hold traction when the rear tire drives into the obstacle. Those hips back is a key piece. A lot of riders will almost drive their knees forward on accident. And that's what I'm kind of seeing here. Your knees are kind of forward. That's going to increase the speed of the dropping front tire and almost put you in a position where on a different splatter, you might spin the tire. So once again, off of the kicker and when the rear tire drives into the obstacle, my position is almost identical. Straight knees, really creating that space so as soon as that rear tire drives in, I have all the space to drive my hips completely back over the rear fender and hold perfect traction and slow the front tire drop. We don't want the front tire to slam, which Yours really didn't slam. You held it nice and clean over the top, but just focusing on those knees behind toes and allowing those hips to drop back completely will give you more confidence as the splatters get bigger and bigger and bigger. But honestly, man, that was really, really solid. It looked really good. Great practice of your splatter. You are well on your way to being able to knock out some big ones, and that's a key piece, man. Just focusing on those knees, focusing on those hips. You know, I'm nitpicking little things here because, like I said, that's a really good splatter. But those extra things that you can focus on will just make you more confident as you move forward. I hope everybody's enjoying this stuff. This has been a lot of fun. I appreciate the entries. We'll probably have 5 or 6 of these episodes coming out. This is a lot of fun. And while I'm healing, figured I'd just keep doing them. This has been a lot of fun. I appreciate your guys' support. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Follow us on Instagram at IRC Moto, my personal Instagram page at RichLarsen511. Make sure you're subscribed, man. We are well on our way to 100,000. Shouldn't be too long here. And I'm very, very happy that we're able to create such a neat following, and I appreciate everyone's support. So this is awesome. Thank you guys so much. Until next time, keep shredding.